Welcome everybody. This is the SharePoint Patterns and Practices General Development Special Interest Group, and this is the bi-weekly sync. Today is October 3rd, 2019. And this is the call where we're going to talk about everything else except SharePoint framework and client-side development. So in this call, it is intended to actually go through branding capabilities, provisioning, automation, PowerShell, Azure functionalities, solution architectures, and all of information architecture, and all of these kind of things. And then we do have the separate bi-weekly SharePoint framework community call, which is happening every single, bi-weekly on the same time on Thursday morning Pacific time. And obviously, depending on your location, is it the morning, afternoon, or evening? Now, let's actually get going on today's agenda. So we'll do a quick recap of what's happening on this PnP side core and the engine side of the house, PnP PowerShell, and the modernization tooling. We're trying to be relatively fast again on this, but there's actually a lot of changes and improvements on that side of the house related on actually some of the demos which you kind of see today as well. So first we'll start with Chris Kent. It's been a while when Chris has actually done his column and list formatting tips, so he'll be showing some of those today. And crossing fingers, we'll see some horses on his demos, because I think everybody is waiting for that. If you're not aware again what that horse reference is all about, you'll see it when we go to the Chris's demo. Right, Chris? He's not ready for this question. And now he's running around. Will we have horses, Chris?
Oh, you know we will.
Okay, excellent, cool. Sorry for that, putting you on a spot on there. It's like, where's my unmute button? Where's my unmute? Okay, then Erwin van Hunen from Rencore is going to show you some really cool improvements, which is happening on the tenant provisioning engine side of the house. So how can you really provision end-to-end cool-looking portals, and these are actually going to be eventually available as an open source portals for you. So you can actually use the PnP PowerShell or code to provision any of these demo content to any tenant in the world. So we're looking into making that happen in a quite fast time frame, actually. But today it's actually running code locally from Erwin's computer and the templates, but we'll talk about that progress during his demo. And then the last demo from Paolo is really cool as well. So as part of the engine improvements related on provisioning engine and lookbook site integration and a few other integrations which we're working on, and there's now a new Webhook support for PnP Tenant templates, and that helps on having a discussion between or progress indication on, let's say, a custom UI or a web portal which you have implemented, which is then calling a provisioning engine to get something happen. So really cool stuff to know as well. We know that there's a lot of ISVs and partners who have built custom implementations and solutions on top of the PnP Tenant templates, which is absolutely by design. That's what we want people to do. So these are great improvements for them as well. Now, a quick recap on the opportunities to participate with the community, and we always have these slides in the community calls. So demo a solution or technical pattern. So please volunteer if you are interested on gaining or demonstrating your functionality, gaining visibility, turning into an MVP, well, or just show a cool pattern which you have been implementing as part of your day-to-day work. So showing cool solutions for everybody else will help everybody to understand what's possible around Office 365 development and SharePoint online or on-premises development as well. Well, I would actually prefer, well, why not on-premises as well, but and not farm solutions anymore at this time, hopefully. Now, contribute on GitHub, definitely an option. You don't have to contribute towards our sample galleries. You can. Just a kind of a recap, why do we actually ask people to submit their samples towards our gallery and our GitHub repos, is that then we can control those samples and those assets. And that is actually quite important for Microsoft, because there's if we would just promote your GitHub location behind of a link, we do not know what will happen for that link later on. So is it pointing somewhere else? Is the information still valid? Is it still working? And all of that. So that's why we're asking people to, if they have cool samples and solutions, to actually contribute them to these centralized GitHub repository sample galleries, so we're able to promote them as part of the work what we do. And most important, if nothing else, please let us know if something is bothering you, Microsoft doesn't get it, please let us know what we're not getting, so we're able to fix that. So really, really important thing. And provide feedback. Obviously, positive feedback is always definitely as welcome. We tend to be always providing more negative feedback because that raises always more attention in ourselves, definitely, but positive feedback is absolutely welcome as well when we communicate towards the other people in the community. And well, in this case, in our community side of the house, I think we're pretty good actually on that one. So people are super, super helpful around the other peoples who are contributing as well. Good. Quick recap on our assets, AKMS SP DevDocs, on developer documentation. You can find everything around SharePoint Framework, Teams integration with SharePoint Frameworks, building Teams tabs, Graph integration, farm solution implementations, even sandbox solution implementations from that one centralized location. AKMS SP DevDocs videos is our YouTube video channel. I think we had like 230,000 watch time minutes within the September. So it's good to see that people are finding these videos and these assets as well, because there's a lot of valuable insights on those videos and recordings. And then SharePoint Dev Issues, our dev issue list for reporting anything what you see around developer topics. So as an example, suddenly some API starts behaving badly, please let us know so we're able to jump on it and we're able to go and check out what's actually causing that possible issue. One thing maybe to know, this SharePoint Dev issue list is not for out-of-the-box functionality. So if out-of-the-box web part or out-of-the-box list behavior is changing, we can't unfortunately tackle those things using this channel. It's just an agreement between the different parts of Microsoft. Now, and obviously, feel free to ask questions and have a chat on the chat window in the team. Super important part of these community calls as well. Now, one thing what I did earlier today, I shared this in the social media already as well. I just collected a quick updated set of metrics from September on how the community is behaving and how much people and what people are actually doing in the community. And what's really interesting on September side of the house, the SharePoint framework usage actually grew more than 15%. And it's already in a massive scale level. So we're still growing in this humongous month-by-month section or month-by-month growth, which is highly surprising for everybody. But 15% is insane growth, considering the fact that it's already by far the most widely adopted extensibility model in Office 365. We had more than 43,000 views in SharePoint Dev YouTube channel, generating 238,000 watch time minutes, 59,000 total visitors in a related GitHub organizations. That means SharePoint, PnP, and OneDrive organizations in a GitHub. What's really interesting, this is a new statistic which we haven't actually shared in the past. The PnP components, meaning PnP JS, PnP Sites Core, the NuGet package, and PnP PowerShell, are actually generating 6,377 requests per second worldwide towards SharePoint Online. So people are quite widely adapting and using this tooling, which is great. So more than 27,000 tenants are actually using these open source components across the world. But 6,377 requests worldwide each second through PnP components. That's quite wild, to be fair. Tenant templates, Erwin is going to talk about them, was used in 3,289 tenants last month. And overall, not just in September, overall in our repositories, we've been already having more than 1,000 contributors, which shows that our community is learning how to contribute in GitHub. And we have a lot of initiatives like what David Warner is doing related on helping people to understand how the GitHub system actually works, because that's quite often actually the number one, let's say, challenge for people to contribute is by them being afraid of the GitHub. So we're going to have an explicit section a week from now in the community call for David to actually talk about his effort and helping people to get that adapted on using GitHub in their day-to-day work. One additional guidance also which went live today, or a recap, just a reminder on these things. There will be some changes on the throttling models, and if there's any challenges related on that, please obviously let Microsoft know. But we also have updated guidance around discovering files and detecting changes in scale in SharePoint and OneDrive. So the intention is not that you are scanning across all of the sites and all of the libraries and all of the files in the libraries to do some analysis on things, rather use the get changes and the recommendations which are behind of this scan guidance documentation. So please have a look on that if you're an ISV or building stuff in scale to analyze what's happening in a tenant. Now, moving back on the open source side of the house, PnP CSOM Core library, I think Bert, you will be actually talking about this one. So let's get to the right slide on there.
Yes, thank you, Vesa. So PnP CSOM Core, our core library, usage-wise, at the bottom right, you see we had a nice jump. So it's 20,000 plus tenants using this core library out of the 27 that Vesa mentioned in the beginning. So this is our most used component. What will be new? We'll have a new release next week, Monday, having the September 2019 scheme as the default scheme for provisioning for tenant templates. There will be several improvements around client-side page export. I guess Erwin will touch upon some of these, so I'm not going into too much detail there. Same about bullet number 3, export of list items. Erwin will have more details. Bullet number 4 as well. So you see a lot of things that actually are in the core library will come up in the demo in a second. And one last thing there is the skip intermediate page version. So you might have been annoyed by the fact that when you create a modern page using PnP provisioning engine or just the modern page API in our engine, that you'll end up with like a ton of intermediate versions that should be gone now. Looking forward, I think it's the usual story. Mainly, we still have like a fairly big backlog of PRs to merge, and we're doing really our best to get them all processed, but it just takes time. And so, if your PR is not yet processed, be patient. We'll eventually get to it.
Yeah, there's a, how would I put on that one? There's a high pressure problem. Also. Yeah, it's a scalability problem. There's a high pressure for the team to deliver certain things for Ignite. There's other things which are causing priority delays on some of the contributions, but it is definitely a positive problem. So the people are so active that we can't keep up with the contributions, and that means that sure, we'll get a resource improvements or investments then more in the future, because we need to keep the community happy as well.
It's also kind of, we sometimes think like, now we've covered everything, things are perfect, but then this clearly shows SharePoint is so wide and different and complex sometimes that there's always cases which we didn't cover. So yeah, but that's good. Yeah. Keep them coming, the PRs. I think we can move to PowerShell now.
Let's move to the PowerShell side of the house. Erwin, I think you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's a very similar story to Bert. So all the goodies from Core, they automatically drill down to PowerShell, especially for the things that we're working right now. What I'm working on right now, those tenant templates and the changes in there, and also the work I'm doing currently to prep for Ignite. Some things already drilled down to PowerShell. For instance, now you're able to set the thumbnail URL on a modern client-side page, and I'll show you that in the demo a bit later too. Bert did quite some updates to the convert to PnP client-side pages commandlets. We have logging now.
Just to recap, what does that commandlet do? Because
Bert, that commandlet, that's the main commandlet that does take a classic page, being a wiki, web part, blog page, or publishing page, and generates an equivalent modern page. And that's like since it has so many input sources, it has a ton of configuration options already today. So, and I've been adding more again.
So that's basically, and again, just like Core, we have a lot of PRs waiting. We're not forgetting you. We know you're out. The code is out there. We will merge them, but yeah, unfortunately, right now it's a bit of a scalability problem that we're looking at.
You have been instructed to concentrate on other areas,
you did, yeah.
Unfortunately, so, but it's a good area where we're concentrating as well. Now, quick modernization tooling recap as well. Bert, what's new in here?
What's new? So I think first point is usage. So we kind of almost doubled, well, not really doubled, but we went from 30K to plus 50K number of pages being transformed in September. So really nice growth over there. Also the capabilities that we introduced over the last months to start modernizing on-prem pages. You see the the yellow and the black bars on top of the September column, so the most right column there, meaning people are starting to use the transformation from SharePoint 2019 to SharePoint Online and from 2013 to online. We also saw 2016, even 2010 transformations going to online, so that's starting to really grow. Majority still is wiki pages, but publishing pages is kind of almost at the same level as wiki pages from a transformation perspective. Now, looking at the new features, so the next release, again, next week, Monday, we'll have the first time you can start doing blog page transformation. So you just connect to your blog site, and you can pick up the blog entries and just create a modern page from those. So we copy the metadata as well for you. So that should be all fine. We have two new options. One, to keep the page creation modification information, essentially kind of keep the author, editor, modify date, and create a date from the original source page and put it on, stamp that on the target page. There's an option to post the page's news, so really handy. If you want to have it as a news, then you simply provide that flag. The copy metadata now also works in cross-site transformation scenarios. So previously, when you had a wiki page and you kind of, let's say you read a wiki page in SharePoint on-prem and create a modern page in SharePoint Online, at that point, we didn't copy the metadata, but it has been fixed now. So we have full metadata copy cross-site if that's needed for you. What else? An option to populate the page author. So when you create a modern page, you have an option to put the author in there. If you manually create a page, the author will be populated. You see like which person created that particular modern page. In transformation, we didn't do that, but now you can. So you can specify a flag, and at that point will populate the page author. Then there's some fixes around web part handling from on-prem. An intermediate page versions thingy is there as well, and several other small fixes. So actually, it was a quite active month in page transformation land, I would say. So lots of things happened. So really looking forward for everyone to jump on the October release once it's out. Because I do see that folks keep using old releases. So like if I see like a release of March, April, something used, kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's people
if
can do that, of course, but
it
works. But it's so much better right now. So why would you? But yeah,
sure.
Anyhow,
sure.
So call to kind of upgrade to the latest releases once they come available. It's just once a month. So
sure.
For the scanner, which is a tool to analyze your environment to prepare for your modernization work, which is kind of pretty broad, going listen libraries, group connect pages, portals, infopod workflow. So we'll have some. I'm working on some workflow infopod improvements there. So we'll have some kind of workflow mapping to flow kind of data, and we'll actually crack open the workflows and compare the workflow actions with flow equivalents and provide like a mapping score. So that work is in progress. And there will be one new component. There will be a blog scan. So we'll have a scan that will list you all the classic blogs in your environment with some usage information, like which blog is being used, which is active. And then based on that data, you can decide to potentially modernize those blog pages.
And just to re-elaborate, the scanner is there to understand what you have on your tenants, because quite often people don't know what kind of site collections and capabilities people are using. So it is a super valuable thing. And then the transformation framework is there to help you to make the actual transformation. But to be able to even evaluate the amount of work, what you need to do to transform the modern experiences, you need to understand what you have. And that's where the scanner really is super useful as well. Good. I think that's it. Chris already noted on the chat as well that you've been using the modernization scan, but you're not going to do a demo on that one. But you've been really happy with that, right?
It's awesome and really easy to use.
Cool.
Really like it.
Good. But let's actually jump on Chris's desktop and start with a rounding and date capabilities in column formatting, and then we'll move to Erwin and then to Paolo straight from there, and then we'll get back on the presentation when the time is right. Chris, take it away.
All right. Hi everybody. It's been a while. I'm Chris Kent. I'm Office Development MVP. I'm on the core team for PnP. I'm currently out of Indianapolis, Indiana, although in like 2 days I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee from then on. So that's pretty exciting stuff. But even more exciting is what I got to show you today. So if we go over here, go to our classic Warrior Horses site, as we all have, and the Warrior Horses have decided that they've got several fallen comrades, right? So they've got a lot of people that have died in the course of their work, or by people I mean horses. You know, and what better way to remember those people than by listing them in a SharePoint list? You know, very kind. So we go to our fallen comrades list here. You know, and this is nice. Wow. Look at all these people. Could we make this a little better? Well, luckily, with a couple of new functions and operators, we certainly can. The first thing we're going to show you is what if we wanted to say, this is when they're born, that's when they died, that's great, but I want to. So I'm going to add a format only column by going here to more, and I'm going to create our calculated column in a minute. All right, there we go. We'll just call this age. All right, make this calculated column. And again, the reason I use these calculated columns with a formula of equals double quote, is so that they don't show up in the new and edit forms, but I can apply format to them. So we'll hit OK here. We'll go back here. Now we've got this nice column I can format. So let's zoom this. We'll format this column. So column settings, format this column, and we'll just type it in directly here. So what is dots for say? Yeah, okay. So we'll type in our little squigglies. All right, and we'll say this is going to be an elem type of div. That sounds great. All right, but the thing we care about is we want to set our text content, right? So in this case, we can actually set this to calculate this age, right? In the past, this has been fairly difficult, you know, just because of rounding issues. So let's take a look. So if we wanted to take something like equals number, all right, and we'll say died, right? So this is our died column. So if we convert that to a number and we convert the other date, born, to a number, we can actually get the number of milliseconds since 1970 whatever, right? So obviously this is not a very helpful number here. So we'll take a look at, wow, that was their age in milliseconds since 1970 something, right? So that's their age in milliseconds, really, really helpful. But if we take that, instead we divide that, right? So we'll throw this on here and we'll divide this by, say, what am I dividing by? You know, 1,000 for the milliseconds times 60 for the seconds times 60 for the minutes times 24. All right, and we'll preview that. I did not do. Let's just copy and paste what I got over here in the other screen. How's that? Copy that. We'll paste that. All right. So that's this will be their age in years. Right, so that's their age in years. If we take away the 365, right, we've got their age in days. Great, but that is not helpful. Nobody cares that they lived, you know, 0.18. I mean, probably their family cares. Sorry, Mr. Chuckles. Okay, but one of the things we can do with that, right, so we can add these nice functions here. So we can say a ceiling, right, because if you live part of a day, you should get credit for the whole day. All right, so we'll say ceiling now. Look at that. We'll knock it off. We'll just round it up to the very next integer, right? Now, if we're doing that by year, all right, so with times 365, you don't get credit for an extra year, so we're going to do something different. We're going to do floor. So that's going to round it down to the nearest integer, right? So that's how we get their age, which again can be really, really helpful. Using these rounding functions, floor and C, would be awesome for things like our pie chart formats or some of the other data bars. When we've been showing those percents, we haven't been able to get rid of until recently. Like the 9 digits of precision there. So this will let you get rid of all that and really clean up your formats in a nice way. All right. So that's beautiful. We'll just save that excitingness. And that's okay. But what if we want to do something else, right? Like maybe we want to highlight people that have died just this year, right? So we can format the current view. And we're going to do a nice thing here where we're going to use an additional row class. So an additional row class provides a way to provide, a class across your entire row, and you can do that conditionally. So if I type in additional row class, right, I can do this. And I can just say, if there's a nice new function here where I could say I can get certain parts of a date. So I can get the year, I can get the month, I can get the day. So in this case, if I wanted to say if get year, so it just looks like this, at now, so that's the current date and time, equals, year of, let's say, died. Then I want to apply the class ms bg color, and we'll say theme tertiary because that's a popular color, right? Otherwise, we don't really want to highlight anything. Let's try that out. And bam, everybody that died in 2019 is now highlighted, right? So how kind of us. Now we can see exactly who died. But say we want to take this even further. You know, we want to apply something even further to that. We want to really provide a way to honor our comrades. Well, we can use something with our new tile props. This, and fun fact, you can actually combine tile props with an additional row class, just like I'm doing here. When I preview that, I got to type in the formatting correctly. So let's try that again. Let's grab all that, paste it in, and we'll just leave off. But you can provide your additional row class inside here as well, or even an additional format, because when you do tile props, we'll just save that. Now you get this nice tiles feature, right? So if I switch over to tiles, I can see we have a nice memoriam, right, to our fallen horse friends, right? We've gone ahead and set that up, and you'll see a couple of things we're doing here that are interesting, besides, you know, playing everything on a tombstone. If we come down here, you'll see this massive looking thing here that's just beautiful. But what it's doing is it's looking at the month, right? And then it's substituting that month. And we're actually able to a custom date format this way. Right, we're looking at when it's 0, it's January. You know, when it's the 1st, it's February. Because for whatever reason, JavaScript decided that months are a 0-based index. Either way, that's true over here in formatting as well. But this allows us to provide really nice date formatting, where in the past we could only do, you know, time or date strings in your locale, right? So now you can really go in here and you can calculate dates between things, right? You can say how long it's been between something, highlight it based on the current date, all sorts of really cool stuff. So that is the brand new functions. So let's just review real quick. We jump back over here. One I didn't cover is the new POW function, and this will just do exponential power. So if you want to do, you know, 4 squared, you type in POW and then 4 and then 2, right? And it's going to be 16. But here's our floor. Again, it's going to collapse, and then ceiling is going to collapse up to the next highest integer. All right, very exciting. These are very helpful. Over here, though, is our date part operators, right? So we got the get date, which is just as confusing as in JavaScript, right? Because get date actually, for a reason, is the day of the month, right? So that's going to be anywhere from 1 to 31, you know, depending on the month. And then get month is going to start with 0, which is important to remember. I guarantee that's going to cause you a problem at some point. So just add a 1, right? If you're looking for the numeric value, and then get year is the full 4 digits for a year. Right, so that's going to be, you know, 2019, not just an. All right. So all of those samples I just showed you are available, or they will be as soon as I process my own pull request. Take a look at those. These are going to be really helpful for doing all sorts of cool stuff inside SharePoint. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. I have to ask that. Would you guess what will happen after 999 if the year is in 4 digits? So.
You know, I don't know. I don't care.
Okay, cool. So let's actually move to Erwin's computer and desktop. I think Erwin has really, really cool demo waiting as well. Awesome stuff, Chris. Really cool stuff. Pretty dark demos this time, but hey, it is live though as well. But now let's, Erwin, we can see what you're sharing, and yep. I think the audio is absolutely fine. So take it away.
Good. Good. It will be hard for me to top what Chris just showed. Right. So tenant templating and new functionality in modern pages or client-side pages, as we call them internally in the engine. What you're looking at is one of the templates we will release. Is one of the Lookbook V2 templates. This one is called the landing. And what you're looking at here is actually almost 99.999% template that we did a full round trip on. So we extracted the template from a source site and we applied it to my tenant, and lo and behold, there is the page. And what you're looking at this template and or this site is that we have this vertical section here, which is a new functionality in modern pages. And although the schema supported it and there was sort of rudimentary support for in the engine, we now have, we believe now we have full functionality for vertical columns, which is actually quite cool. And so we extract them We figure out all the web parts are in there, and then we also apply them. And to give you an idea of how to actually build up your client-side page in a template to use a vertical column, I'm going to open this specific template. That's the site that you're looking at here. This is the tenant template. Now, if you used a provisioning engine before, you might be familiar with the whole concept of a provisioning template. A tenant template is nothing more than basically a wrapper around one or more provisioning templates, and we allow you also to create site collections. So when you apply this template to your tenant, we will actually first create the site collection for you and then apply the template to it. So in this case, we're creating a communication site with a specific URL that we have parameterized here. And then we apply this main template, which is located here. So if I scroll a bit down and we go to the client-side pages, here you see the client page, and you see there's a new type here, which is a 1-column vertical section. There's a 2-column vertical section, and there's a 3-column vertical section, allowing you to specify, okay, this vertical column on the right, it's always on the right, and then there's an X number of columns to the left of this section. We also now allow you to set the vertical section emphasis. It's a separate emphasis from the section emphasis. So they can have different background colors. So if we go back to the page, you see that the emphasis is a bit different here. This is neutral. It is gold. It's like light gray in this theme. Then you basically add your controls to your controls collection, and the only thing you have to keep in mind is to get your control in that vertical section. If you go a bit to the right here, you see it here in the end, put it in the last column effectively. So if it's a 2-column vertical section, you will put it in column 3, because that's the vertical section. That's number 3. You have first 2 columns on the left, and then the vertical section to the right. So put it in the last column, and your web parts will show up there. So we did a lot of changes the last couple of weeks to the engine. It's actually, I lost almost track of how many changes we've been doing. It is 10 times more better. It has been improved a lot when it comes to extraction of client-side pages. Keep in mind, for instance, what we do, and we did it already, but even that code has been improved. We discover, for instance, all the images in your client-side page, or we try to discover them as much as possible, as far as we can go, and we will add them to your files collection here, and we refer to them in the web part then by a token. So we dynamically figure out where that file is located in your site, and then at application time. One of the things that we also allow you to do on the client-side page, let's see if I actually have an example of that one in here, in this specific template, is to set the thumbnail URL. And I might actually not have an example here. No, I'm just scrolling down from client-side page to client-side page here. And I don't think we have an example here. No, but you can set the thumbnail URL to a URL in your site collection, like inside assets and whatever. And that URL, that thumbnail, you might be familiar with it or not, but if I open a page here, that thumbnail is actually showing up there. And this thumbnail, you can edit separate from, for instance, the background image in your header if you want to. So you can set a separate thumbnail. That thumbnail will then be, say you create a client-side page without a header background, but still you define a thumbnail, then that thumbnail will be exposed in like the news web part, for instance, here. So that's a nice way. You can actually create those pages now through the engine. While working a lot with these source sites, or if you work a lot with extracting templates and also applying templates, and for instance, if you use the engine with a customer, you say, can you please run this template on your site? But you will have to specify these parameters on the PowerShell commandlet, etc., or you have to specify these parameters on the commandlet to get the template. That's a bit cumbersome, and it's easy to make errors. And something we've been thinking about for a long time, we started to implement now, and that is the ability for you to create a configuration file of your settings that you want to use while extracting currently only while extracting, but this will also come during application. And if we look at that configuration file, it's a JSON file. So we know that the provisioning template is XML, but the configuration file is JSON. And this is currently what we allow you to do. So you can specify which of the handlers you want to run. So if you're only interested, for instance, in exporting the list, you just specify one handler. There is a schema behind it. Right now, you'll see that the schema is pointing to my core repo, but this will be located in a central location, which we probably will do before Monday. So with the schema, we have these completion functionalities in VS Code, for instance. So you can pick from the handler that you want to run easily. We allow you now, when you extract a template, you might have noticed that the navigation elements in the template always have the remove existing nodes set to false, which is annoying a lot of people, including myself. But we basically say always, we do not delete things unless you explicitly tell us to. And that's why we always set that one to false. And that means that if you reapply that template to an existing site, the navigation nodes will be added to the existing navigation, which is annoying. Now, with this configuration file, and notice only through the configuration file, we have no other parameters exposed through the command list. For that, you will have to use a configuration file. With this configuration file, you can say, listen, set those properties to true. We want the template that is being generated to have that remove existing nodes property set to true. What we also allow you to do, and this is very interesting, if you move from one tenant to the other, is that you exclude author information where possible. It's not the custom web parts and the kind of stuff we don't do. But for instance, in the page header, we will remove author information. In the news web part, we will remove author information. So we will actually physically clear out the attributes of the JSON for a news web part, or the attributes on the header tag in the XML, and remove the information about authors in there. If you want to export all the client-side pages, not just the home page, which is the default behavior, you just say include all client-side pages. And this is a big one. I think if you want to export a specific list instead of all lists, you can now specify this list section. Then you have a list collection in here, and per list you can say, okay, export this specific list and include all the items in that list and give me only these fields. So we basically go through the items in the list, and we'll create data rows for that specific list, and we will include the fields that you request. If you don't specify a query, we will just dump everything in there, including the internal fields. And you can also say, listen, I only want the ones that match this query. Now, this is just an ordering query, but this is a full camel query, so you can do wheres and etc. if you want to. And we will filter the items in the list to this query, and then export the data as data rows. This is very nice, for instance, if you have calendar items in your site that you want to move over. For instance, here you see that specific query that I use. You can also set skip empty fields to true. That basically means if the category is not set for that specific item, we will not include it as a data row or a field in that data row. So that's an option you can do. You can also just say, listen, I don't want a camel query, but I want to limit to number of fields, specific fields, and you just leave out the camel query. And what will come is also this property, include attachments. I'm still coding on that. And there is the option of setting the row limit to I only want the first 10 rows, for instance. So this is you will see that we will expand this configuration file more and more. And our goal is just to not introduce new functionality in the old way of configuring the engine. If you use the engine with C#, you basically use a creation information object. You can still do that. So all the code is still 100% backwards compatible, but we will introduce new functionality in this configuration format here. Which makes it a bit easier for you to control bulk exports, etc., of multiple sites. We're pretty excited about this. It makes your life a lot easier. As I said, I lost track almost of all the changes we've done in the engine. It's a pretty major release we're doing on Monday. A lot of new functionality and a lot of new performance and stability improvements. Because we're releasing the September will be set to default, it does not mean that everything in that schema is implemented yet. There's still gaps, but just that you know that. So don't expect the full schema to be 100% functional yet. All the functionality you have today in the old schema is 100% functional in the new schema. The new things in the schema will slowly trickle in, and most likely the majority will happen basically after Ignite, when we we'll do a new release basically next month. And that's it. That's it for me.
Erwin, can you show some examples? You did this in a completely 100% from a developer perspective, but can you show some of the provisioning examples, getting people excited on the upcoming templates, because these are the Lookbook V2 templates, which will be available for anybody to take advantage quite soon. And we've been now testing the new designs, and these designs are coming from our SharePoint design team. So Katie and a few other people are running the designs, and then we are now creating the open source templates for everybody to take advantage.
You want me to go to some sites?
Yeah, show some examples which are coming, because I think that's insanely interesting. There's a really good set of sites and designs which anybody can then use as a starting point. And with example content. And all of this is what you're getting when you provision a template.
Yeah. Global marketing. Some of them are hub sites, some of them are not. This is a hub site. And there is a let's see, we have leadership connection, for instance, is one. And they all have different themes. So the themes are now provisioned on site level, not on tenant level anymore, which is also a great improvement. We're basically not affecting your tenant. Everything is contained in the template, in the site. Nothing will be provisioned to your tenant.
Which means that you can test these templates in an existing tenant, which help on creating, for example, content and structures in an existing tenant. And hey, then if you realize that, oh, this is exactly what I want to do, I'll just flip the content, and then you can do a swap URLs and swap route to maybe the new created experience and all of that. So the designs are really cool. Templates are all available. We are working now on the provisioning service and Lookbook site changes. All of that is coming obviously in Ignite timeframe. Really cool looking stuff. If you are already like, hey, I want to get access on some of this or want to test this, the October release of the engine and PowerShell is coming on Monday. And then already today, these templates are actually available in a GitHub, but those templates are using capabilities which are using, assuming the October release of the engine. So it's good to be aware of that. Now, from a timing perspective, sorry.
One last thing. I showed you this configuration
file.
Now,
Now you have pressure. Now you have pressure. So.
I'm not announcing another service device. Sorry. But how does this configuration like this? So you say whatever. This is how you configure the PowerShell commandlet. You say just configuration des and you point to the JSON file. And you will also be able to actually send in an object. So you can tweak that object through PowerShell if you want to. Instead of actually pointing to a file, you can send in an object containing a string or an actually JSON object. So that will come.
Cool.
That was it.
There's one more question from Chris before we go to Paolo. When exporting lists and importing, are they added using as so is it maintaining author and the dates when it's actually adding those?
No.
It's good to know. that it's actually creating those using the identity which is getting used.
Yeah.
At least for now. So one step at a time in the right direction. Good. Now let's actually thank you, Erwin, for that one. Awesome stuff. We're insanely excited on the new designs and the new capabilities on the engine, because now anybody can provision these templates to any tenant in the world, and you'll get exactly the same end result, and that's super, super cool. And I was just about to ask Paolo that do you want me to share my screen to slides, but answer is no.
I can read in your mind, you know, Visa. So
yeah, I know. Thank you. But Paolo, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the provisioning webhooks that we introduced, in April 2019 with Schema 2019-03, but that we improved, or we are going to improve with the release that will come out next week, next Monday. In fact, in Schema 2019-09, we improved the webhooks capability. And let me try to explain you what these webhooks are. First of all, in April, we introduced a set of webhooks which you can configure in a provisioning template, so that whenever you start or you complete a provisioning template application, or whenever every single object handler in the hierarchy of object handlers that do the actual provisioning of your template will be invoked, you will be able to get a webhook notification if you have, for example, an external service, an external application that want to do monitoring of the happenings under the cover of the actual provisioning of your template, as well as, you never know, if there is any exception, you can have a webhook which will notify you that an exception occurred during the provisioning of a template. And this set of webhooks were released in April this year. But we also introduced in 2019-09 schema, and we are going to release them in the engine next week, 3 more webhooks for being notified when the provisioning of a tenant level template of a hierarchy of site starts, completes, or eventually if there is an exception while applying a tenant level template. What do I mean? Well, using a provisioning template, you can have a template which will apply onto an already existing site, or you can also have what we call a hierarchy or a sequence of sites, which means that you can have a bigger template which will create for you multiple sites, eventually within a unique hub, if you want, and it will apply multiple templates onto every single site created by the big tenant level template. In that scenario, it is useful to know when the provisioning starts and when the provisioning completes. And then if you want, you can also have notification of all of the events related to every single template that we apply within a full hierarchy of templates. This is, as you can imagine, really useful from our perspective, thinking about the provisioning service. But if you are an ISV and you are building solutions to do automated provisioning using the provisioning engine, it will be really useful and helpful for you as well. From a technical perspective, and to give you some implementation details, you can use these webhooks either providing a get or a post capable endpoint. So it means that from an engine perspective, we can make a get request or a post HTTP request targeting your webhook endpoint URL. And when we do that, we can also provide to your endpoint custom dynamic parameters, which means that we can read parameters that you can provide to the provisioning template when you run it, when you execute the actual provisioning. Or we can also provide arguments in the query string if it is a get request, or in the body of the post request if you want to configure your webhook in order to have a set of custom settings that you need in order to properly identify, for example, which is the instance of the provisioning that is running and that is notifying your webhook. When we make a post request, we can call your webhook providing a JSON message or an XML message, or making just a form post as it would be an HTML page in a web browser. The webhooks can be invoked synchronously or asynchronously. And let me say, an Azure function is, in my opinion, one of the best candidates for being a receiver for such kind of webhooks. So let me move to the demo environment to show you how it works. And first of all, let's have a look to the new schema that we have. In schema 2019-09, as I told you, we introduced the tenant level webhooks. We already introduced in the schema 2019-03 the provisioning template webhooks. And this is to give you an idea of how a webhook looks like in a provisioning template. Well, it's just an XML element. Sorry, after so many JSON samples, we needed to have at least one XML sample. So here we have it. Just for you, Erwin, you know. So we have a provisioning template webhook in which we can configure the URL of the target webhook endpoint. And as you can see, the URL can have custom parameters, for example, in the query string, which can be webhook parameters, which means items defined right here. So you can configure custom parameters here, and you can even use the tokens in the value of your parameters to make them dynamic. Or you can read any other information like a parameter that you already have in the template, because we do the parsing of this URL. Moreover, you can select if you want to make a GET or a POST request. And you can configure the kind of provisioning webhook that you want to fire. So it could be, as I said, provisioning template started, completed, or whatever else is supported by the engine. Almost the same logic can be applied to the provisioning webhooks, which are the webhooks at tenant level. So we have exactly the same idea. We configure the URL, the HTTP method, the kind, and the body format if it is a post. So you can say JSON, XML, or form, and you can configure if it is synchronous or asynchronous. And as before, you can configure parameters. So here I have a real template in Visual Studio Code, which I created starting from the Contoso drone landing lookbook site that we have in the provisioning service. And in this template, we have some webhooks configured, which target a real Azure function, which is listening for my webhook calls. So here is the Azure function, which is really trivial. I simply get all of the query string input arguments, and I get the body, and I show it in the log window. So let me start this one for the sake of testing that it is properly working, and it is working. And now I can simply go to PowerShell, connect to a target site, and run the provisioning template that we just saw in Visual Studio Code. By doing that, my provisioning template will be applied onto the target site. And at the same time, while the provisioning will happen, we'll be able to see, as you can already see here in the log window, that I have the provisioning engine, which is calling out my webhook to notify my external service, my external application, of what is happening under the cover of my provisioning. So for example, here I can see, well, it's pretty fast, so it's not easy. Let me pause it. But for example, I have a message for the provisioning started to inform me that the whole hierarchy provisioning has started. Then I can see that I have the provisioning of multiple templates that is running. I can see that object handler has been started, and this is the regional settings one, and so on and so forth. So I will have all of the messages useful to provide to my end users what is the status of the provisioning template application, even if I'm an external service, an external application, just using the provisioning engine in the backend. And I think, and we think, that this is really powerful, especially for ISVs that want to build high-level provisioning solutions using the provisioning engine. And I think that's it on my side as well. So you have a few minutes for Q&A eventually, or whatever else.
Thank you, Paolo, for that one. Super cool stuff as well. We do absolutely acknowledge that maybe that's not a, let's say, if you're a smaller partner, you might not be super interested on the webhook capability, but that's actually something which been requested by many ISVs and many partners who are building this kind of a completely custom UX As an example, based on the provisioning service implementation, which we have, because that's completely open source. So you can use that as a baseline and then modify that based on the customer requirements or your own requirements. So really cool stuff. We do have a few minutes here. I have another community call actually starting on the hour as well. So we can have a few minutes if there's any random questions in here. So there's a question from Mugilan. Can you create, cite, and apply provisioning template using PnP Webhook? That's kind of, I would say, slightly confusing things, because the webhook is for indicating the progress. This webhook, which we just showed, is indicating the progress of what's happening when you are applying a template. Now, yes, there is the native webhooks in SharePoint, but there's no native webhook right now, at least for when we create a site collection, which is one of the, let's say, limitations. That's why you can integrate all of this stuff, the site designs, but that's a slightly different discussion as well. Now, any ad hoc questions which we can answer here at this point, or we can close a few minutes early as well. That's not a massive deal if there's no burning questions at this point. Really cool stuff. 3 super cool demos. Thank you, Chris, for that stuff, for the column and list formatting demo. Really great stuff over there. Slightly darker side of the demo, so hopefully we didn't actually scare anybody with that one. Chris tends to step on the line always. Thank you, Erwin, on the great demo related on the templating capabilities. It's a really great stuff which is coming. I think we're upon a release. Erwin, is it 13 new templates based on the new design? I think it's 13, isn't it? I should know because I'm working on those templates as well. 12 or 13, something like that. And templates.
I think it's 13, something in that range. Yeah.
So the new templates are gradually coming out. Technically, you can actually use the new templates already starting from next week, whenever the October release is out, because these templates are available in GitHub. So everything is open source what we do. So you can take advantage from them in your designs. And one of the key points with all of the lookbook templates is that if you have a pre-sales gig or pre-sales, or you need to sell your customer, your management chain, that's why Modern SharePoint is cool. You can easily create sites based on those templates. And there we go. You have example content and all of that. So really cool stuff. And thank you, Paolo, also for the webhook side of the house. That's really powerful for many of the partners. But I think that's it for now. So thank you very much for everybody who joined. And thank you for questions. There was a good discussion again on the chat window. Quickly answering maybe on Russell's question, or Bert can answer that on the chat window. But thank you everybody for joining. The recording will be out within 24 hours in the SharePoint Dev YouTube channel, like all of the rest of the recordings and demos, and we'll then have a next community call. Actually, we have next monthly community call on next Tuesday, and then SharePoint Framework community call on Thursday next week. So 2 calls next week. Lots to cover or see from the recording side. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Friday, enjoy Saturday, Sunday, and we'll be definitely in touch. Bye-bye.